Hello and welcome to EDD 670C. This is just a quick little module on preparing for your comprehensive exams. Oops. So we'll talk about preparing by yourself, preparing with others, and preparing the week of. So preparing by yourself, review the rubric. I already said this. This is your study guide, and review the past questions. These are also your study guide. These resources are on the Canvas site. I'll show you them in just a little minute, but don't wait to study. Don't wait to look at them. Don't wait to practice. Don't wait to review the rubric. Start now. There is not an assignment for this class to keep you on pace with this. This is something you will just be doing on your own. And if you start in the middle of July, you're starting too late. So start now. Practice answering the questions. Don't just read them and say, I think I got it. Actually practice writing something out, thinking something through, mapping something onto paper. I also think it'd be helpful for you to assess your reactions to the questions. Are you nervous? Do you feel like you can address them head on? Are there certain parts of the question that you are more comfortable with versus others? That will give you a sense of your level of readiness. And if you think that your level of readiness is not enough, then circle back to what I just said and start reviewing, practicing now. Get those literature reviews organized. Not the literature review paper for the chapter 2, but all of your annotated bibliography, all the stuff you've read, get that in order now. And you can also use the rubric to assess your responses. What kind of marks are you getting? If you are unsatisfied with where you think you would fall on the rubric, then you will probably be unsatisfied with your final comprehensive exam score if you do not change what you're doing. So just really the whole point of this is get started. You may want to think about timing yourself. Again, you have 3 days to finish the exam. So timing yourself in terms of sit down and write for 3 days multiple times over the summer, that's not what I mean. But basically just get a sense of how long it takes you to answer each part of the question, at least initially, and make sure that you've allowed enough time, or make sure that you think that you can allow enough time over the 3 days for the real exam to answer the questions. So when you think about preparing by yourself, again, you've got to organize that literature, create tables, crosstabs, titles, headings, any way that you can think that you want to organize your readings, do it. There is an example on Canvas that I will go over in just a second. And again, I cannot say this enough. Make sure you have all of your sources listed in APA format. For the full reference page, you might even want to do it for parenthetical references. Whatever you can do in advance, that will help. Plan your study time, thinking about the course of the summer. What do you have in your plans, and what do you have in your family, whether that be blood family, friend family, extended family? What do you all have going on that will prohibit studying and preparation, and how can you work around that? This is just sort of, what we have to do this summer when we have comps. So give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen and we can go over some of the Canvas resources. Okay, so this is the comprehensive exam resources that is in the Canvas page. It's one of the modules. And I showed you this in the last video, but there's some resources up here. The one that I want to go over first is the qualifying exam rubric. So basically what this means is that it is no secret how you will be assessed, how the answers to the questions will be assessed. So I'm not going to sit here and read each one of these boxes to you over this video. That'd be quite boring and probably not very helpful, but you can see that there are pass, marginal pass, and no pass sections, right? Criteria, the criteria change, of course, based on which one of those your writing falls into. Of course, you want to aim for this pass for each part of the question. And then we want to look at the criteria. So there's a portion on logical reasoning, clear, explicit, well-organized writing, ability to accurately describe theory and concepts from courses. So notice that it specifically says from courses. That means that you cannot only reference outside reading or reading related to your dissertation. You will need to reference theory and concepts from your courses. You also need to be able to apply the theory to practice. You need to address issues of equity, inclusion, diversity, multiculturalism. You need to effectively and appropriately use the literature to make your argument, make your claim. And then, of course, you need to use APA format. It says here key reasons for do not pass. I don't actually have that. This document was shared from another faculty member, so I don't have that here. But basically, the reasons that students do not pass is because they do not have logical reasoning, right? They may not clearly, explicitly have organized their writing, etc. So again, take a look at this. If you are feeling incredibly overwhelmed, take it piece by piece and understand that you do not have to get a full pass in every single section to pass the comprehensive exams. You do not have to get a full pass in every single section to pass each question, right? Of course, you want to aim for here, but it is likely that you will get a few pass, a few marginal pass, maybe even a no pass for one of your questions. And that might be okay, right? But let's aim for the full pass option. And again, use this as a study guide. If you think that you can logically reason a question, but you know that you have a hard time applying theory to practice, spend more of your preparation time on applying theory to practice, etc. Use your time well, right? If you are an equity, diversity, and inclusion expert, then don't spend your time there. Let's go back to describe your theory and concepts from the courses. Okay, so we will move down the Canvas page. I did want to load these sample questions. Same thing here. Here they are for you. I'm not going to read them one by one, but you can see here that each question, of course, has multiple portions of it. That should be a given, right? This is a comprehensive exam. It's not going to be sit down and write a paragraph. So we'll go over the different parts of the first question right now. So the first one is, how has your exposure to theories and concepts in the program, so again, referencing that material from the coursework, how has it up to this point impacted your understanding of what it means to be an instructional leader? So there's a key there about instructional leader. It's also asking you as a human, as a student, as a practitioner, right? So it's okay to answer this question with your own experiences, perceptions, feelings, reactions, etc. How do you assess your own development as an instructional leader? So again, there's a big reflection piece here, and we'll see that in the next sentence as well. Make clear your understanding of the theories related to instructional leadership. Take a self-reflective stance in responding to this question. One of the pitfalls I could see when you answer this question is that you do not do an appropriate, robust response using the literature. You could seemingly answer this without explaining the theory or the citation or the reference and just saying, I have developed as a leader and here's how. You will need to say, I have developed as an instructional leader because this theory, XYZ, relates to my work, XYZ, I responded to it by XYZ, right? You really need to make sure that you're addressing each part of the question in full. I would also recommend that for this question, you do not rely on one or even two theories. You have been in class for a full year. You want to, again, make sure that you have a robust response that covers everything in the rubric. If you do not include anything about multiculturalism, you will not get full points because we know that that is a full section on the rubric, right? If you do not create a logical argument, you will not get full points because that is a section on the rubric. I would highly recommend that you draft this response and then match it to the rubric. Have a peer match it to the rubric. What would they rate you? Switch your papers, right? Etc. Let's do one more just for the sake of being thorough. So the second question, describe and critique how your school is implementing Common Core standards. Please include as part of your description and critique what effects the implementation has had on equity and access at your school district site. Okay, well, the second sentence clearly tells us that you must address equity, inclusion, diversity, multiculturalism, right? So if you don't do that, you will probably not pass this question. You want to have a clear understanding of what is happening at your school site and implementing core standards. If you are not currently teaching, I highly recommend referencing the school at which you were last employed, last working, or reading this question, you may want to get a very thorough understanding of a peer, be that in the program or another friend or former colleague, for example, of how they implemented Common Core standards. What you don't want to do is go into this question blind, having no idea how any school at all has implemented Common Core standards. You will need to define Common Core standards and tell how that school is implementing them. You also need to critique what is not clearly stated here explicitly is that you should be critiquing this implementation based on what? Based on theory, literature, what you have learned over the past year with citations. You've got to back it up with existing knowledge and resources. Also, you can 100% include your own experiences, observations, your feelings as an instructional leader, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a school site member or community member. However, you must attach it to the literature. So I hope this was helpful. Go through the rest of the questions, see where you would apply theory, see where you would apply some more rigorous research application from the literature, right? Go through these, plug in your sources, flesh out, create an outline, right? Any of that prep work you can have access to during the week, the comps weekend, right? Create a binder, create a spreadsheet, create whatever you need to do for these practice questions, then you can lift out to use during the weekend. Here is another idea for preparing. This one is with a partner. And it's pretty similar or a version of what we just did, right? Read a practice question, understand it with a partner, address these questions down here. If you do this with a partner, they can help. Maybe a part that's confusing to you is not to them, and they can help explain it, and vice versa, right? That's why that's part of why this activity is really helpful. Again, use the rubric to help you interpret the question. Where would you talk about equity? Where would you link the theory to practice? Where would you create that logical argument? Work with a partner to outline your response, to brainstorm. You can map it out. This says flip chart. It doesn't really matter if you're doing this virtually. Use any kind of shareable Google Doc, etc. And then also create feedback, right? For each other. If you can do it, you could do this separately and then switch. But this is just one way of practicing the question. So this is very quick. You will not, in this activity, you're not actually writing paragraphs, right? You're just basically designing an outline and talking through it, which is perfectly fine. However, I also recommend at some point in your preparation time that you sit down and try to write full, complete paragraphs. You try to answer a question to the best of your ability. Am I saying spend 3 days on it? No. Am I saying spend 3 hours on it? Yes, possibly. Okay, so that's an activity here. Here's some other preparation recommendations. Prepare your materials, of course. Form study groups. The qualifying exam is a solo project. You cannot ask any of your colleagues, classmates, whatever, during that weekend. However, preparation does not have to be a solo adventure. Again, make your content lists however you want to organize. I suggest actually multiple ways of organizing. So you might want to organize based on theory. You might want to organize based on method. You might want to organize based on subgroup findings. You might want to organize based on, overarching topic, etc. You will want to include self-reflection, some of the stepping stones that you're making towards your dissertation. You want to reflect what you have learned and what you have written about. So think about that practice question that was all about reflection. If you have written a full response to that question, you can lift that writing you have already done in your preparation section. And if you get a question in the comprehensive exams that asks you about reflection, you have already started to write it. Then you are just refining, massaging, and editing what you've already written versus starting from scratch and having never reflected on anything before. Let me say that again. Let's not sit down during the week or during the weekend of the comprehensive exams and start writing from scratch on something you have never thought about before, right? We should be thinking through all of this. I will also say, in my experience, based on the sample questions that we're providing you, the questions for the exam, they will be new. They will not be verbatim what you have here on this Canvas site. They will be similar. You will have to be thinking through the same types of things, right? The same types of issues in broad strokes. Again, think about the rubric. You will need to apply theory to practice. You will need to address diversity, equity, inclusion, and multiculturalism. You will need to create a large logical argument. The first question we read was about self-reflection. The second question we read was about implementing Common Core. The second question probably requires a more thought out logical argument, again, based in literature, compared to a reflective question, which, yes, still needs a logical argument and flow to how you think you have developed as a leader, but you don't need to argue that so much as you do need to explain it. Whereas if you are critiquing a policy, right, the crafting the argument and that logical flow might be more important. And here's an example of a way of organizing some of the major concepts, themes, theories, authors, etc. This to me is relatively basic. If I did it this way, I would include much more in my notes. I would include more authors or citations for each concept or theory. And I would also have the second page be the full reference list for each of those listed here. I was speaking with one of you earlier and we were talking about reference tools such as Mendeley, EndNote, etc. If you are not already extremely familiar and comfortable using it, perhaps now is not the time to rely on a tool that you have not developed comfort with. If you need to be old school and have a list of references on a Word doc, and that works for you, that's fine. For the exam, you need to do what works for you. Okay, give me just a second. We will go back to the PowerPoint. So I just talked a little bit about how you can work through or prepare with others using the partner activity on Canvas. So you should be familiar with that. Again, studying and working alone does not have to work for you. I know that we are emerging from a closed state in the pandemic, but if coffee shops are open, get a small group there. If libraries are open, I'm not sure of the status, especially depending on what county you're in, but if they are open, often they have study rooms that you can reserve. And you can go in there with a group and then you don't have to worry about volume. Also, depending on the umbrella, heat, sun, and your computer screen, you can always work outside, either at a coffee shop with outside tables in someone's backyard, or honestly, picnic tables, bringing some folding tables, some camp chairs. I suggest writing as part of your preparation, but that doesn't have to be the only way that you prepare. Thinking about that partner activity, there were lots of opportunities to do a lot more talking or some like scratch paper. You don't have to be formally writing on your computer to be able to prepare effectively. So this is some ways to work with others. Again, if anyone has a large enough living room or backyard space to gather, I recommend that. I remember taking comprehensive exams in my master's program way back when, and we got together at a coffee shop for hours and just kind of wrote. And I do believe we were outside and we were not in a pandemic. But we just kind of wrote and organized notes and made sure we had our citations, and that worked well. Okay, so preparing the week of, this is not the time, again, it's not the time to learn a new citation software, and it's not the time to do a lot of things. What it is the time to do is to know the basics. That's all on Canvas. The dates are the 23rd to the 26th of July. I'm not going to go over all of those details. You should know them, right? They should not be a surprise come Monday when it's time to submit. So make sure that you've got that ready to go. That's on Canvas, as is the PowerPoint from the summer's first all cohort meeting. Review that so that nothing is a surprise. I highly, highly recommend you set up your space in advance. And that does not mean Friday morning, right? That means probably the Wednesday that week of. Create a quiet time and place for yourself. Most of you or all of you probably live with other people, maybe not, but if you do, I highly recommend that you have out of the house activities. You may want to consider another workspace for yourself, at least for certain parts of the day. So you might be able to work at a coffee shop if that works for you. If you don't work well at coffee shops, don't plan to go to one this weekend. Same thing with the library, like I mentioned before, if they're open. One thing that I do just during my regular workday is I have my kind of my desk set up, but I also work on the couch and I also work in my bedroom. And so thinking about what you need to do to give yourself a workspace that's effective, do it now. This is coming from a place of privilege, which I was unable to do as a grad student, but some people are able to go to another place that is quiet and comfortable, such as a hotel room. Some people give themselves writing retreats. If that's something that you're able to do, you may want to consider that. Maybe you have a cabin or other kind of vacation space that you can utilize for this weekend. That could be a possibility. Alternatively, you can get your housemates out of the house and they can use that space. Again, not everyone has access to that. Not everyone is afforded that luxury, but if you are, you can consider it if that will work for you. I mentioned mixing up your workspaces if that works for you. All of this is just take it or leave it, but these are some things that have come to my attention when it comes to this type of moderately high stakes assessment. You will definitely want to go grocery shopping and get all the snacks you need in advance. Plan your snacking and your meals accordingly. If you want to do DoorDash or some other delivery, that's perfectly fine. But just make sure that you are kind of prepared for that and that is not taking away your focus or energy from the task at hand. I wrote here, pamper yourself or splurge if you need to. If you have, I'm kind of a foodie, so I'm always thinking in terms of food rewards, but if you have, a really, if you are motivated by Skittles, for example, now is the time to invest in a Costco size bag of Skittles, right? You can reward yourself as you make practice or as you make progress. If that's something that you just need to snack on to be productive, again, now's the time. Maybe you get yourself a fancy chocolate bar. Maybe you get a Frappuccino every morning or whatever it is, but now's the time to invest a little bit in what will make you comfortable, what will make you motivated, what will make you productive. Of course, you need to know where your materials are and have any materials or tools for success at your disposal. A lot of what I have here is sort of old school, literal paper and pencil, but open up blank documents. If you use an iPad, have it ready, have it charged. If you have been organizing some notes in either Google Drive or any type of other app, like make sure they are working, you're logged in, etc. And then, yes, this is a very intense weekend. However, you also cannot write for 3 days straight. Do what you need to do to keep your sanity and honestly keep calm and study on. So it's okay to take a break and go to the gym or go do anything kind of physical that will help your brain. Of course, we know endorphins are activated as you exercise. You may want to do some meditation. You may want to religious or spiritual activities, have music on or off, whatever works for you, right? You do need breaks. You can't write for 3 days straight. So you don't need to schedule them to the minute, but you do need to think about where they will fit in your workflow for the weekend. If you need caffeine, have that. Make sure you've got it on hand or that you have scheduled in a Peet's or Starbucks or Coffee Bean run. But sleep is also important. You don't need to pull an all-nighter for this. If you are prepared and organized, sleep will not only will do you good, but is really, really important. And the last thing that I will introduce you to, or maybe you've already heard of it, is the Pomodoro method. This is something that I find really effective. And basically, there's lots of apps and that sort of thing that are available. But essentially, you set a timer. It's usually 20 or 25 minutes. And you do nothing but work in that 25 minutes. You answer that question. You review that literature. You in this case, it probably should be writing. Maybe it's outlining, maybe it's doing your resources, etc. But you do nothing but work, very, very focused, intense work for 20 or 25 minutes. And then you set a timer for a short break, usually 5 minutes, maybe up to 10. And then during your break, you do what you would do on a break. You go to the bathroom, you get a drink, you get a snack, maybe you're answering emails. That might be distracting in this case, but do what you need to do. And then you set the timer again and go back for 20 or 25 minutes. And as many cycles as you can do that, usually if you can go 3 cycles, then you can afford yourself a longer break. I believe it's, if you do 3 25-minute cycles, then you're going to do maybe a 15-minute break and get back to it. I find one or like 3 cycles, right? So one full cycle is really nice and I need a little bit of a longer break. Or to be really effective with your time, you do 3 cycles of one thing, say it's all writing. And then when you start kind of the next cycle, that 4th cycle, then maybe you switch gears and go to references. Maybe you switch gears and go to outlining. Maybe you switch questions, right? Something like that. But that Pomodoro method does 2 things. One is it keeps your work time really focused. And 2 is it actually makes your break time more efficient because you only have 5 minutes. And so you've really got to speed through. You can't take 20 minutes online shopping, which I might prefer to do, and then get back to it, right? That timer really helps you focus your time. So there are apps. It could also just be as simple as setting your phone timer. It doesn't have to be fancy, but that is something that I really like for being productive. A couple other just last words of wisdom. Writing means that you have words on a page. Words on a page is progress. Don't be afraid of the blank page. Don't be paralyzed by that. Let it be a canvas in which you can put stuff out. And again, as I have said before, revision is the name of the game. That won't be any different with your comprehensive exams. You will be revising. And that's one thing that I did not say in terms of the exam itself. Give yourself time to revise, whether that be Monday morning, that might be cutting it too close, depending on your comfort level. Maybe you revise as you go. Maybe you save it all until Sunday evening. Whatever it happens to be, make sure you have time to revise. You will want to read through for logical errors, for organizational errors, for citation errors. for spelling errors, right? So make sure you have time to revise. That's all for now. I hope this is helpful in terms of your preparing for your comps. You're all going to do great. Just make sure that you're prepared going in. All right, bye-bye for now.